evening, everybody. My name is Luiza and I would like to welcome you warmly. Uh, and um, and I'm very, very happy to see all of you in the next webinar by EduNation Global. Those of you who have not ever been to one of our webinars, let me very briefly tell you who and what EduNation is. We are a group of teachers and teacher trainers who some years ago, almost 8 years ago, started operating in Poland exactly on the 6th of December 2016. And so far have been operating successfully, building a community of extremely motivated, talented, gifted teachers who love and are passionate about their profession. And some time ago, around the pandemic, we also started the second part or the second story behind EduNation, and that is EduNation Global, which is a community, an international community of teachers of English and of languages, but mainly English, obviously. So EduNation is based in Poland, in Warsaw, but we operate across the nation and outside the nation as well. And EduNation Global is, as the name suggests, a global community of teachers. And I would like to welcome you very, very, very warmly, hoping that you will stay with us and you will stay an active member of this community. Now, what we do is we do quite a lot of free teacher training webinars on Tuesdays at 9:00 p.m. Central European Time for Polish community, and at least once a month on Thursday at 9:00 p.m. Central European Time for our global community. And hence, tonight, I'm seeing you in the next webinar. I am an English teacher by profession. I started teaching English very, very long time ago, a very long time ago. That will be about 25 years now. So quite incredible to believe that this is such a long time, and this has been such a long time. And about 16 years ago, I started my teacher training career as well. And so far, I have been combining both quite successfully, I think, although, of course, there is a lot of work in both. And tonight, we are going to be talking about the teaching rules that always come to the rescue. And these rules will be based on teacher behavior that I observe when I come to visit your lessons. And I come to visit quite a lot of lessons in Poland mainly. And I have got quite a lot of different conclusions related to what I see. What is interesting is that these conclusions have not changed for a very long time. And this, I was actually talking to someone about it quite recently, that things that I observed in when observing and visiting teacher lessons, let's say 10 years ago, 12 years ago, and what I observe now, conclusions that I had 10, 12, 15 years ago, and conclusions that I have now do not differ that much, to be honest. So that's an very, I don't exactly know what to make of that conclusion yet, but it's quite interesting, I think. Now, organizationally, house rules, and that will be the last thing, which is not of merit. Remember that our webinar is being recorded, which means that tomorrow, those of you who have signed up, and that is with your email addresses, you may expect that the recording and the certificate of attendance will reach you around midday. just please bear in mind that because we send quite a lot of emails, and I mean one email goes to a lot of people, sometimes your inboxes will recognize this email as an offer or as spam. And therefore, if you see that, oh, Luiza promised certificate and the recording and it has not reached me yet, before you write to me, please make sure that you have checked all the folders in your inboxes. And I mean, offer, spam, and some folders that you may never have seen before. Look there, and you will probably find us in one of those folders. Okay, and one last thing. When I start my showing you the slides and telling you about the rules that come to the rescue, I am not going to be focusing that much on your comments. We have got an elf, which is, or who, I'm sorry, who is in the backstage, and please say hi to everyone, dear elf. And we will she will be answering questions or comments, so that I don't focus on you writing, but I focus on my thoughts and my the slides and everything that I have prepared for you for today. And then I think this is organizationally, this is it. So dear elf, please stay focused right now, because I am not looking in the comment section anymore. Okay, so 10 teaching rules that always come to the rescue. I've already told you where this idea came from all my observed lessons and conversations with teachers, conversations with school owners, private school owners, and academic managers. I have got quite a lot of contacts with all these three groups, or participants, members of these three groups, so teachers, school owners, academic managers. And I have a feeling that in a lot of situations we talk about always actually about very, very similar situations. So rules based on some of the mistakes that we see in lessons. Just remember, and I need to say that as a small disclaimer, sometimes you will hear me say something and you will say, yeah, well, maybe this is a rule, but my class functions differently and my students are different. I don't know your students and I don't know all your classes. I know a lot of students and a lot of classes and a lot of teachers, but I don't know you. Probably, maybe there is someone in the room that I know personally, but probably most of you I don't, and I definitely don't know your students. So every lesson is different, every class is different, and what is a rule in class A doesn't necessarily need to be a rule in class B. So please bear that in mind, and do not ever, I think this critical thinking and critical approach to what trainers and coaches say is quite important. To remember that, well, yes, there is this rule, but my class functions differently. So I already told you that some of these rules that I will be talking about are based on visits, and really some of the conclusions that I make, some of the errors that I see, some of the behaviors that I witness, they really have not changed in years, and that's an interesting conclusion, I think. So the first thing that I want to talk about are the rules related to the beginning and the end, and closing, finishing the lesson. I love comparing lesson to brackets, that there is a moment at the beginning of the lesson that the bracket opens, and at the very end the bracket ends, but it is one whole. And however you begin your lesson, in a very similar manner, you should finish the lesson. You should, in a very similar mode, think about the beginning and the end. How you begin, you should end. What you say at the beginning, you should finish off at the end. The aims that you inform your students about at the beginning need to be summed up and looked at the very end of your lesson. And what it means is that sometimes what I see when I come to lessons is that the beginning and the ending are uncorrelated. They have nothing to do with one another. The lesson aims are completely not specified. They are not verified at the end. And the final minutes of the lesson are not devoted to any summary. We don't check if the aims have been achieved or not, but we push, push, push so that there is one more activity, one more exercise, and this lesson somehow falls apart. We don't feel that, as in every good story, there is the beginning, the middle, and the end, that you should be thinking, and this is a very, very good rule number one, that we think about our lesson as one story, as a story that has the beginning, the middle, and the end, and that it really creates one whole, one unit, and not a series of uncorrelated, unconnected in any way exercises, activities, activity types. The second rule that, in my opinion, is crucial is that the rule of not treating the book, the course book, the manual, and the author as a godlike figure. And so by that I mean the rule that I apply this rule in every class that I teach, and I recommend this kind of application to every student, that every teacher that I have contact with. You look at a material, you look at an activity, you look at an exercise, extra activity, something additional, something that you want to supplement your lesson with. And this material, this exercise has an author. And this author had an idea about how this exercise should be conducted. And sometimes this idea will be perfectly suitable for your class, but you need to have this reflection. So this rule that I reflect upon every exercise, thinking, is this really for my group? Or maybe I should change something. I have different aims. I want my class to speak more, and this activity is based more on individual work. I like this activity, I like the content, but I don't really like the way this particular author thought about, the administration of this activity. So I will take the content, but I will change the administration. Or I will take the content, but I will divide it into 3 groups, and I will ask them to speak to one another. I will take the content, but I will add 2 more points, or I will subtract, or I will divide into 2 different activities. So we do not treat the activity in the course book, extra supplementary material, anything that comes and you find attractive, as something that is comparing it to religion, that we don't touch, we don't change anything. But we have every right to change the content, tweak it, add something, subtract, change order, change the way it is administered in the class, so that it matches the needs of your class and the needs of your lesson plan better. And it's a very, very good rule. I supplement, I use these, but I do it my way, knowing my class best and knowing my students best. So this religious approach to author's design is not a good idea. Sometimes, yes. If you see, oh, this is perfect, this is perfectly what I need, fine, don't change anything. But reflection, reflection, reflection. Is this the best way for this class? You can change the form, you can change the content. The third rule that I push very much onto teachers that I work with is paying attention to things that your students do well. The rule of paying attention to the beauties, the rule of paying attention to the beauties, to the strengths, to what the student has done well, to the progress, paying attention and drawing your own attention to things that your students have succeeded in. Now, this comes as a conclusion of really many years of working with teachers, and of obviously also observing myself, because I am a teacher myself. What do I pay attention? What do I have a natural tendency to pay attention to first? Do I pay attention to my students' beauties of production, of language production, to their strengths, to what they have done well? Or do I pay attention to things that, well, they have not been so so perfect, so otherwise mistakes? And I don't obsess. I know that mistakes need to be corrected, and I know that there is a moment in every class for error correction, for feedback. But having said that, I also know that we do not pay enough attention to what your students have done well, and we need to. We need to. So let's just not pay attention only to mistakes, but let's make a conscious and brave decision at the beginning of a lesson. In this lesson, I will control myself, and I will monitor my own behavior about what I pay attention to most. So we pay attention to the positives. We have a sheet of paper. We divide this sheet of paper into two columns, the columns for the pluses, the columns for the minuses. So I direct my own attention, knowing, for example, and I did this exercise some years ago when I decided that I need to find tools that will help me control my own tendencies, my own behavior. And one of these tools was dividing a sheet of paper, this feedback sheet of paper, into two columns, the positives, the negatives, and knowing that I need to pay attention to both. I need to look at what my students have done well. I need to look at what my students have done not so well. Or, for example, communicating to my students, in this lesson, we pay attention, this particular lesson, these 45 minutes, we pay attention only to the positives. I pay attention only to the positives. And having said that, you force yourself to skip the mistakes because you made a promise. So that's a nice teaching development tool, I think. The fourth rule that I am really obsessive about, is games that make sense. I like playing games very much, and games that will help my students remember better, recall information, recall rules, automatize expressions, automatize language, grammatical application of some rules, and so on. So I love games, and I think they play an important role in every class. But, and there's always a but, games sometimes kill time, and games are sometimes administered only so that students have a good time. I have nothing against having a good time. I love having a good time in the classroom, and the atmosphere is extremely important, rapport, imagining what will be an activity that my students will enjoy, absolutely very important. But at the same time, I do think that this can be a situation of killing two birds with one stone. We can have good time and at the same time make a meaningful, or suggest or design a meaningful game that will not kill time, but it will be at the same time revision, recall, activation of students, interaction in pairs, and making all students participate and not just one, for example, and really meant to produce, recall and produce, and not, for example, enumerate letters and hang someone. And I'm not going to even call this game that I have in mind. So if you think about the game that you want to administer, ask yourself questions. And this is such a good rule, such a good teaching rule. I ask myself reflective questions before I ask my students to do something. So I have a game, and for example, Hangman. I want to play hangman. I never play hangman with my students, by the way, but I want to, let's imagine a situation, how to play with these reflective um, reflective questions. How many students participated or will participate in this activity, and for how long, and how much actual communication will there be? Now, when I think about hangman, usually, typically, there is one student participating and not really communicating, but just enumerating, calling out letters. How much preparation did it require? Well, actually, this does not require any preparation, so that's a plus for hangman. And number 4, how much time was lost? Now, I think quite a lot of time is lost. If you have a 30-minute lesson, 45-minute lesson, and you play hangman for 8 minutes, I have a feeling that this time is lost. And I know that it evokes a lot of emotion always in the comments. I'm not even going to look in the comments right now. But so I'm leaving this to the elf to deal with the comments that might appear right now, but please be reflective. So when you have a game, and as I said, I really like games, but they need to suggest or offer, I think will be a better word, actual communication, participation of all students, ideally at the same time, and not wasting time. And again, also not wasting a lot of your private time out of classroom time when making a preparation or preparing for the class. Rule number 5 that I think always comes to the rescue and has come to my rescue a lot of times is the instructions that really instruct, and the instructions that don't confuse, instructions that are meant to clarify and make sure that students know exactly what to do. So by having said that, I want to say and stress the importance of preparing how you will instruct your students, especially if exercise is new, activity type is new, they've never done it before, and you have a feeling that this activity or exercise that you want to ask your students to complete might be a bit organizationally, structurally, a bit more complicated. How will I instruct my students? So what is the simplest possible way to instruct my students? And I will tell you what I tried doing recently, knowing that some activities will be more complicated. I asked ChatGPT to give me the simplest instruction, and it actually was quite successful. So I prompted ChatGPT saying, I have got an activity in which my students, and I described the procedure. Please write the shortest instruction and the simplest instruction that my students will understand. And it gave me quite a positive outcome. So instructions, I give instruction, and I always ask my students to repeat those instructions. So I say, what we are going to be doing is da na 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 na, and then I say, Ola, can you please repeat what you are supposed to do right now? And Ola repeats. And when Ola repeats, it suddenly becomes clear that my instruction was or was not successful. Also, my students know that I always ask them to repeat instructions. So when I give instruction, they always stay focused because they know that I will ask one of them. And I never ask question, do you understand? Because it does not give me any real information, any information that I can trust. But when I ask my student, Ola, can you please repeat? What are you supposed to do right now, Ola? Oh, and Ola explains, I hear that my instruction was or was not successful. And Ola, being a student, will use simpler language that I do. So there are, again, 2 birds killed with 1 stone. Now, when you divide your students into groups, please remember that you need to give instructions after you have divided them. So not you give instruction and you have divided your students, they need to know who is doing what. When you distribute handouts, first of all, give instruction, show the handout, give instruction, and show it to them, and only then distribute the handout, because otherwise they will not be focusing on what you want to say, but they will already be filling out the handout. Sometimes you will, if you speak the language of the students, their mother tongue, you will sometimes need to use the sandwich method. So English, in my case, English, Polish, English. I limit the my application of Polish in the classroom as much as possible to only to time economy. And when I see that my students frustrate over something that they don't understand, so I don't like the feeling of frustration. But generally, the language of instruction is English. So I really need to feel the like real need and time economy, even for the sandwich method. But if you feel that your students need very much the mother tongue to understand English, Polish, English, or English, Czech, English, English, Slovak, English, and so on, will be necessary. Rule number 6 concerns reading aloud, which in some classrooms is a very typical activity. Now, the rule that governs reading aloud is very simple, very simple. If your goal for completing a reading activity with your students is understanding the reading, the text that your students need to read, if this is your goal, do not ask your students to read aloud. There is an exception. I will talk about this exception in a moment. If your goal is to practice pronunciation when reading aloud, ask your students to read aloud. But you cannot have two goals at the same time. So reading aloud and asking your students to understand the meaning and practicing pronunciation is not possible, because our brains are able to consciously focus on one thing only. So when you ask your students, read, paying attention to short vowels and long vowels, and then tell me what the text was about, then they will say they will do either or. Either focus on nice pronunciation, especially on lower levels, or focus on the meaning. So you need to answer this question to yourselves first. What is my goal when I ask them to do that? Is that comprehension or is it pronunciation? If comprehension, let's not read aloud. If pronunciation, let's read aloud. Exception, when the text that they are reading should be naturally in natural language read aloud. So for example, rail announcements or fairy tales or poems, then yes. But most texts that we read are not meant to be read aloud. Rule number 7, my favorite rule, I think, is doing exercises, the same texts, the same tests more than once. I know that we are pressed for time. I know that we have got national curriculum, which is extremely demanding. I know that we don't have too much time, but I absolutely love doing exercises, the same exercises in a different way, sometimes cut, sometimes torn, sometimes with changed order, sometimes only one or two sentences, sometimes in a completely different way, and sometimes in exactly the same way, more than once. And why am I doing this? Because I strongly believe in strengthening the synaptic connection in your students' brains. If we want to remember, if we want our students to remember better, we need to play with their brains. We need to play with their synapses. We need to play with how strong the connections between their brain cells are. And if your students see something once, the connection is non-existent or very, very, very weak. If your students have contact and are exposed to something 7, 8, 9 times, word, vocabulary unit, chunk, some grammar, function, expression, collocation, if they see it 7, 8, 9 times, you can be pretty sure that the connection in the brain will be stronger. And if the connection is strong, then the recall, which means I remember and I can repeat, I can pronounce, I can produce, will be more successful. So rule number 7: we do exercises, the same exercises, more than once. If you do exercises once only, it is a mistake. Now, rule number 8 is we never say this sentence to our students. Now, what do I mean by that? Sometimes you will hear teachers say to students, well, how can you not remember this? We have done it. We've done it. And then when I hear this, I say to the student, to the teacher, well, how many times have you done it? If you've done it once, if you did it 2 weeks ago or a month ago, please do not expect your students to remember. So rule number 8 is quite strongly connected with rule number 7, which is exercises not done once only. So if you say to your students, well, we've done it, then I think, okay, you have done it. You feel that you've done it. You remember, but nobody else remembers, or this particular student doesn't remember. What does it mean? It means that you have not done it enough. You have not repeated it enough. So repetition, revision, recycling, extremely important rule. One of the most important rules of education, one of the most important rules of development. You need to do things enough, long enough, and as many times as is required. Teachers sometimes ask, so how many times should we repeat something for students to remember? I don't know. Sometimes, if you're lucky, once will be enough. But sometimes it's twice, sometimes 3 times, and sometimes 10 times. I know that when I was a student and I struggled remembering the word mundane, I could not remember the word mundane. I knew that we have done it, or I have checked it 20 times, maybe 25. And this is a word, of course, I remember, and I like using it right now very much. But I remember that it took me probably about 20-ish times of exposition, checking, looking up the meaning to finally remember. And we have got such words. You can write in the comments if what word in English it was for you that you just could not remember the meaning of. But then again, I remember that the word tremendous, I recorded in my brain in the first time, and I remember that after the first time, I remembered what tremendous meant, and I could not remember mundane for about 20-ish times of checking and looking up. So there is no clear answer. There is no clear answer, but many, I would say. The only reasonable and responsible answer would be many. So we need to recycle the content of the lessons. We need to recycle exercises. We need to recycle texts, and we need to recycle tests. I love when my students see that I'm giving them a test that they have already done, and they say, but we've already done it. And I'm like, yes, I know, we will do it again. We will see if your knowledge grew, or whether you have been or you are still at the same time in the same place that you were when you completed this test before. You can do it as homework. You can do it only bits of it. You can do it as group work, but you can recycle tests, and it is a very, very strong tool. Now, silence, rule number 9. Do you like silence in your classrooms? Some teachers do not tolerate silence, and I like when students suddenly go silent. And I don't mean that I don't allow them to speak. I mean silence after a question, silence after a reflective question, silence when I ask them, so what does that mean? Or what could it mean? Or in what situations could you say it? Or in what context do you use this expression? Or in what context, how is A different from B? And there is silence. Then I don't feel that this silence is dangerous. I don't feel that this silence is, that I should conclude that something is wrong. I think that my students need this silence to think, and I don't kill it. So if you feel that there is no tolerance for silence in your classroom because you ask a question and you want this question to be answered immediately, then think about my rule. There should be silence in the classroom. Now, how long how long should the silence be for you to stop tolerating it? I remember when I was practicing it some years ago, I had a rule that I have to count at least to 10 in order to start thinking that maybe I will answer this question. So I was asking a question, how is A different from B? And behind my back, I was counting with my fingers to 10. And usually around 6, 7, there came the first answer from my class. But I allowed it to happen. I wasn't talking over that silence, killing the silence. And rule number 10 is please don't believe declarations. So faith in declarations, what I want to say, or what do I mean by that, is when you ask your students without checking what the truth is about their understanding, about their completion of, but mainly about the understanding, and your students say yes, yes, and you don't check what the truth is. So you say, so do you understand? And students say, and they start completing the sentence, the activity, or they start doing something, writing something. And then after 10 minutes, it turns out that they really have not understood, but 10 minutes are gone. So what I would like to encourage you very much is to say to your students, not do you understand, but what do you understand? How did you understand what? How did you understand what I've just said to you? How did you understand the instructions? What is true? What is not true? What is red? And how do you understand the last sentence that I've just said? What do you need to do? Who are you going to be working with right now? And do you understand the division? Okay, all right, listen, we came to my 10th rule based on 10 situations that I quite regularly observe when I visit lessons. I hope that these rules were interesting and practical for you. And I have one more thing to say. These rules come from my practical experience in classroom when I'm a teacher and when I'm an academic manager, when I observe lessons. And I have been doing this for a very, very long time. And these rules and these tips, these practical have the applications, ideas, they have been building up in my head and in my notebook for a very long time. And finally, there came a moment in which I decided to write them, type them, and produce them in a guide for teachers. So what I would like to show you is these rules that I was showing you today. They come from a very, I hope, interesting book that I wrote. I wrote it in Polish, and I also wrote it in English, and the English version is called 100 Classroom Dilemmas with Practical Tips for Teachers. It is an ebook, an e-guide with 100 chapters, and it is each chapter starts with a teacher dilemma, and I will show you. I think somewhere here you should see the pages of this ebook. I will show them to you in a moment. But they cover all aspects of teaching, from games to group management, the entire methodology and thematic guide. And what you see here is that it comes, every chapter that you see comes with a teacher dilemma, and then I describe in every chapter what good practices are. I also talk about traps. So in each chapter, I show you what trap you should avoid or watch out for. And there, in every chapter, there is a task. So there is a section, your turn, and there is a task for you to work on. And this, as what you see here, this comes times 100. So it is a really, really rich source of teacher development. And what I would like to say is that, of course, as you know, we always in Edunation, for those of you here, I'm showing you the titles of each. I'm going to show you the titles of each chapter, so you can have a quick look right now. As you know, we in Edunation we do for webinar participants, there is always a thank you for participating live and not participating in a recorded event. And those of you who would like to get this ebook today by midnight, there is a special offer for you. So instead of, if you pay in Polish zloty, instead of paying 159, there is a special price for you. And if you buy it in euro, instead of paying 39 euro, there is again a special price for you. So I hope that you are going to enjoy my guide. If you want to buy it in Polish, you can also write to me and I will send you a link to the Polish version. But please remember that the Polish and the English version are 100% the same content. It's just one is in Polish and one is in English. So remember that the special price is tonight until midnight. And the feedback that I have received, because this guide has been in sale since February, is amazing. It's absolutely amazing, and I am super happy and super grateful to everyone who has written to me about how practical this guide is. And I know that it is practical, but I thank everyone for the feedback. So this is it from me. Thank you very much. I hope that you enjoyed the webinar, and I hope to see you very soon. Those of you who are here from Poland, remember that on Tuesday, on the 30th, there is a webinar for Polish teachers. And if you want to see the next webinar of Edunation Global, please go to the webpage edunation.global and see what next topic and date is. Thank you very much. Have a great night and see you very soon.